everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. Sensory comfort and autism in adults. Yeah, we found this blog post called Adult Autism and Satin-Trimmed Blankets, a sensory comfort.
Okay.
And it just got me thinking, we hear all the time about kids with autism and sensory sensitivities, but this post really shines a light on how important this is for adults too.
Right.
And get this, they're talking about how something as simple as a blanket can be like a total game changer.
Yeah, and what's funny is that people often misunderstand sensory sensitivities. Like they think it's just a personal preference, like someone who just happens to love the color blue or something.
Right.
But for people on the autism spectrum, it's so much more than that.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit.
Okay.
What exactly are we talking about when we say sensory sensitivities?
Sure.
I mean, we all have senses, but what makes it different for someone with autism?
Well, think about it this way. Your senses are constantly taking in information from the world around you. Sights, sounds, smells, textures, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
And your brain has to process all of that input.
Right.
Now, for some people with autism, it's like their brain's volume knob for those senses is either stuck on high or it's super sensitive. So everyday sensations that most people wouldn't even notice can feel incredibly intense and even overwhelming.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about liking soft things, it's about your nervous system actually calming down.
Exactly. And when those senses get overloaded,
Yeah.
it can lead to anxiety, meltdowns, difficulty focusing, all sorts of challenges.
Oh, wow. So where do these satin-trimmed blankets come in?
Right.
And the blog post really emphasizes them.
Well, satin's a really great example of how a simple sensory input can make a huge difference.
Okay.
The blog describes it as having a smooth, silky texture and a gentle glide, which can be incredibly calming and grounding. But the bigger point here is that it's all about finding your perfect sensory input.
Ooh, I like that. So it's like personalized comfort.
Right. For some people, it might be weighted blankets. For others, soft fleece, or maybe even the right sounds or scents.
Oh, interesting.
It's about figuring out what works for you to help regulate your sensory system and create that sense of calm.
This is making so much sense now.
Yeah.
It's not just about finding things you like, it's about finding things that actually help your brain feel less overwhelmed.
Exactly. And this is especially important for adults with autism because as we get older, the demands of daily life, work, relationships, all of that can make sensory overload even more challenging.
So it's like you need those tools and strategies even more as an adult.
Absolutely. And finding the right ones can make a world of difference in terms of your overall well-being.
Okay, so let's dive into some more specific examples of what this can look like for adults.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you paint a picture for our listeners?
Sure. So imagine trying to focus at work with the hum of the AC feeling like a jackhammer in your head.
Oh, gosh.
Or a scratchy sweater just sending shivers down your spine all day.
Yeah.
For some people with autism, it's that intense.
So how does someone even begin to figure out what their own sensory needs are?
Right.
Is it just trial and error?
Well, there's definitely an element of experimenting and figuring out what works for you.
Yeah.
But there's also professional support available.
Okay.
Occupational therapists who specialize in sensory integration can be incredibly helpful.
No, that's good to know. This raises an interesting question, though. What exactly is sensory integration therapy? I've heard the term.
Yeah.
But can you break it down for us?
Sensory integration therapy is all about helping individuals develop strategies for regulating their sensory systems.
Okay.
Think of it like building a toolbox of skills and techniques to help you manage sensory input in a healthy way. It's not like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works for each individual.
Okay, that's super helpful. I'm already starting to think about my own sensory preferences, Maybe we all have little quirks we could be more aware of.
Absolutely. We all have sensory preferences.
Right.
But for people with autism, the impact of those sensitivities can be much greater.
Right.
It's about understanding that difference and providing the right support.
That makes a lot of sense.
And, it's not always about avoiding those negative, overwhelming sensations.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
It's also about seeking out those positive sensory experiences that bring you comfort and joy.
Exactly. For me personally, nothing beats spending time in nature.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Like the sounds of birds singing,
Yeah.
the feeling of sunshine on my skin, the scent of fresh air. It just helps to soothe my senses and clear my mind.
I love that, and that actually reminds me of something that the blog post talked about.
Yeah.
The idea of personalizing those sensory experiences, it encouraged people to think about their favorite colors, patterns, even scents, and incorporate that into their comfort tools.
It's all about creating a sensory environment that feels safe and nurturing.
Mm.
For some people, that might mean surrounding themselves with soft textures and calming colors.
Right.
For others, it might be about listening to their favorite music or engaging in a hobby that provides that tactile stimulation.
So it's really about being mindful of our sensory experiences and how they impact us,
Yeah,
both positively and negatively.
absolutely. And then using that awareness to make choices that support our well-being.
Right.
It could be something as simple as taking a few minutes each day to engage in a calming sensory activity,
Yeah.
or like making adjustments to your environment to minimize those overwhelming sensations.
All this talk about sensory tools and strategies has me thinking,
Yeah.
what would be in your sensory toolbox?
Hmm?
What are some of your go-tos for managing sensory input?
Well, aside from my nature escapes,
Right.
I find listening to calming music or nature sounds incredibly helpful.
Okay.
I also have a collection of soft blankets and pillows that I use to create a cozy and comfortable space at home.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just need a few minutes of quiet time to myself to decompress and regulate my senses.
That makes a lot of sense. I think we all have those moments where we just need to step away and reset.
We do. It's so important to listen to your body and
Yeah.
give yourself what you need.
Okay, so we've talked about personalized comfort professional support and even building a sensory toolbox.
Right.
But I have to admit, I'm still a little stuck on this idea of satin-trimmed blankets.
Yeah.
It seems so specific. Is
Yeah.
that really a common thing?
It might seem specific, but it actually highlights a broader point.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to the details of our sensory experiences and how they impact us.
So even if a satin-trimmed blanket isn't your thing, the takeaway is to find what is your thing.
Exactly.
That specific sensory experience that brings that sense of calm and comfort.
Precisely. It could be a weighted blanket, a soft fleece, throw a specific type of clothing, a warm bath, or even the feeling of sand between your toes.
I love that. It's about understanding what works for you and then incorporating it into your daily life.
Right. And, it's not just about individual preferences either. There's a growing understanding of the importance of sensory integration therapy,
Right.
particularly for people with autism. This type of therapy helps individuals develop strategies for regulating their sensory systems and responding to sensory input in a healthy way.
So it's not just about finding that one magic object. It's about developing a whole toolbox of strategies.
Exactly. And it's something that can evolve over time as we learn more about our own sensory needs and preferences.
That idea of a sensory toolbox is so empowering.
Yeah.
It's like taking control of your experiences rather than feeling controlled by them.
I agree. It's about recognizing that we all have different sensory needs and finding ways to meet those needs in a way that promotes well-being.
This whole conversation has been incredibly eye-opening. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of the power of sensory experiences,
Right.
not just for people with autism, but for everyone.
I feel the same way. It's something that we often take for granted, but our senses play such a huge role in how we experience the world around us.
This deep dive has really highlighted the importance of honoring our individual sensory needs and finding what brings us comfort. It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. And, it's an important conversation to be having, especially as we continue to learn more about the diversity of human experience and the importance of meeting individual needs.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious, is there one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with from this conversation?
I think the most important takeaway is that sensory comfort is not a luxury. It's a necessity for well-being, particularly for those with sensory processing differences.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can all be more mindful of in our own lives and in our interactions with others.
That's beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. It's about creating a world where everyone feels comfortable and supported, regardless of their sensory preferences. All right, so as we wrap up our sensory journey today, let's shift gears for a moment and bring it back to you, our listener. Maybe this has sparked some new awareness of your own sensory quirks.
Right.
Or perhaps you're thinking about someone in your life who might benefit from a little extra sensory support.
Absolutely.
What everyday objects or activities bring you a sense of calm and comfort?
Yeah, think about it.
Is it a favorite worn-in sweater, a steaming mug of tea, or maybe the sound of rain drumming on the window?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it is, we encourage you to get curious, to really explore those sensations and how you might leverage them for greater well-being.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Even small tweaks can make a big difference, right?
Absolutely. Experiment with different textures, weights, or even scents, and pay attention to how those small changes make you feel.
And if you find yourself consistently struggling with sensory overload, don't hesitate to seek out additional support.
Right.
There are some amazing resources available, like occupational therapists who specialize in sensory integration,
Yeah, they can be so helpful.
who can help you develop personalized strategies for managing those sensitivities.
It's about finding the right tools for your toolbox.
This deep dive has truly underscored the importance of honoring our own unique sensory needs.
For sure.
It's about creating a world where everyone feels comfortable and supported regardless of their sensory preferences.
Absolutely.
So as we sign off, we leave you with this thought. Embrace your senses, explore what brings you comfort, and advocate for your sensory needs.
That's a great takeaway.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into sensory comfort and autism. Until next time, keep exploring.